Hey students and family members, thanks for stopping by. I hope that this video will not only help you on tonight's homework, it certainly will because I'm not only just going to give you hints, I will give you answers, but it should help you on tomorrow's test, which studies westward sailing. Now we know that the main question that we've been focused on for the last couple of weeks was what were the benefits of sailing west? We read pages 96 to 101. We talked about Columbus and the copycats, and we heard about why they believed sailing west would be important and what happened when they eventually did sail west. I want you to go ahead and take a look at all of these different things that I ask you to define tonight. Really all I'm looking for is one sentence or two that's going to pull out some important information about these people or these vocabulary words. The first one I ask you to look for is Christopher Columbus. You can learn a lot about him on page 96. So I would flip there now. On 96, it not only tells you information about when Columbus sailed, but also where. We came up with a quick rhyme to help us know that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He believed that he could reach Asia by a new route, and that new route that he believed would get him there was to sail west across the Atlantic. What he didn't know was he was going to run in to some unknown land. The next person I want you to be able to define is the Taino. You can learn more about them on page 97 of your textbook. If you don't have information about the Taino or forgot to bring your textbook home, take a look at this information here. These were the first people that Columbus and his sailors met after they had traveled and bumped into the Caribbean. Now, of course, Columbus didn't think or know that he was in the Caribbean, but the people that he met were very good and peaceful people. They actually called themselves the Taino because that means peaceful and good. So remember that these were the individuals and the people that Columbus and his sailors met when they bumped into the Caribbean by accident. The next word is epidemic. You can find the definition to epidemic on page 98. It's an outbreak of disease that spreads quickly and affects many people. Well, we know that Columbus and his crew actually created this epidemic of illness that spread quickly amongst people like the Taino who had never been exposed to certain diseases before, and it wound up killing them off. Not good news for them. And of course, Columbus and his men didn't necessarily intentionally do that, but that was one of the negative impacts of Columbus sailing west with his sailors. The next word I ask you to define isn't actually a word, it's another person. This is Pedro Alvarez Cabral. Now I know that Cabral is from Portugal. We talked about how that rhymed and how you can remember that not only was he a copycat of Columbus, but he's from Portugal, and he claimed a lot of land in South America for Portugal. That's a really important key fact because we know that there were a lot of copycats who tried to copy what Columbus had did. Cabral wanted to do it because he wanted to claim land for Portugal. It would have been a problem if he didn't because Portugal was really funding the trip. Amerigo Vespucci, you can find information about him on page 100. Vespucci was one of Columbus's copycats as well. He was originally from Italy. He made many voyages to South America and the Caribbean. Remember that America was actually named after Amerigo because he made so many trips to the Americas, both south and north. Vasco Nunez de Balboa can be found also on page 100, and you guessed it, he's another Columbus copycat. This time, he's from Spain. He eventually reached the Pacific Ocean by crossing the mountains and jungles of the Panama. So if you look at a map of not just the United States, but also Mexico, in Central America, there's that small little area known as the Panama. He was able to cross that Panama and reach the Pacific Ocean. And the next person isn't a person at all. It's actually the vocabulary word, circumnavigate. You can find the definition of circumnavigate on page 101. Circumnavigate means to sail completely around something. To sail completely around something, the word circumnavigate reminds me of the word circle. If you're going completely around something, you're starting from one end, you're going completely around it, and you eventually end up at the same exact spot. Well, Columbus and all of the copycats all believed that you could sail west all the way around and then eventually hit Asia. They were right, They just hadn't proved it yet because they ran into the Americas. Ferdinand Magellan, on the other hand, was able to prove that circumnavigating the world was a possibility and that Columbus's original thought was correct. You can learn about Magellan on page 100 and 101. A sailor from Spain, from Portugal, because they would actually pay the bill. He was a sailor for Spain from Portugal. He circumnavigated the world. He went all the way around South America, proving Columbus's theory that if you travel west, eventually you would reach Asia. Unfortunately, we know from Magellan, he never actually made the complete trip. He made it all the way to the southern tip of South America and then died in battle. However, his crew members continued on, and they were able to prove that Columbus was correct, and so was Magellan. Flip your paper over, and you'll see the back page. The back page is full of information as well, and you're going to see these questions again tomorrow, maybe put in a different way. So let's take a quick look. The first one, short answer, can be found on page 96 and 97, and it's referring to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. They wanted to know, what did they do to hope to gain from Columbus's journey west? Well, we know initially they did not give him the money. In fact, it took them 6 years to finally give Columbus the trip money so he could make that trip west. What they hoped to gain was money themselves to pay for the Reconquista, which we learned in our studies that the Reconquista is a Spanish war to push the Muslims out of what they believed was their land. They also hoped that Columbus would bring gold and spices, which they thought would be found in Asia, which of course Columbus expected to land there but didn't. Oops, he landed in America. And they also wanted to spread their religion of Roman Catholicism. So King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, yes, they wanted gold, and yes, they wanted spices, but they wanted a lot of other things too. They wanted money so they could pay for their own war. They wanted to be able to spread their Roman Catholicism religion, and they wanted settlements for the people of Europe. And that's why they thought sending Columbus over would be a good idea. The next question asks you, who were the copycats? Well, we just talked about them on the previous page, but I want you to list them here. You can find their names on page 100 to 101. They were Cabral, who we know is from Portugal, Vespucci, and de Balboa. Balboa was the one that crossed through Central America's Panama to get into the Pacific Ocean, and Vespucci is Amerigo Vespucci, who made many trips to the Americas and the Caribbean, and eventually made so many trips that they named the countries after him. Be thinking about why people would want to copy Columbus. Why would these copycats really want to get over? And what would be a big deal if they went back to their lands that were paying for the trips and they came back with nothing? One of the final questions tonight. What came from the Eastern Hemisphere in the Columbian Exchange? Well, if you look on page 99, there is a great list of what came from the Eastern Hemisphere and what came from the Western Hemisphere. Well, we know the Eastern Hemisphere from Europe and other places over there in the East brought mostly animals like cattle, pigs, sheep, and horses. They also brought other foods like bananas and coffee beans. Well, this is stuff that people in the West had never seen before, so it was a great breakthrough for them. And the final question tonight is, what came from the Western Hemisphere in this Columbian Exchange? That's also on page 99. Tomatoes and potatoes and corn, maize are all the things that came from the West. They also brought squash, peanuts, and cacao. Well, cacao is used to make chocolate. Good stuff. All of this information is up here on the website for you. I hope that you are able to use it not only tonight to fill in the answers, but also to review and study for tomorrow's assessment. I'm glad that you stopped by tonight and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great one.